When Big Ramy was crowned Mr. Olympia, it was the first time a man over 250 pounds had held that title in over a decade. At 290 pounds, we hadn't seen such a mass monster rule the sport since the days of Ronnie and Jay. So why does Ronnie Coleman hate Big Ramy? Let's find out. Ronnie Coleman versus Big Ramy. No conversation on the biggest bodybuilders can exist without a mention of 8-time Mr. Olympia, Ronnie Coleman. But he wasn't actually considered a mass monster until he placed second to Schlierkamp at the 2002 GNC Show of Strength. Coleman went to work that offseason and showed up at the 2003 Olympia weighing 287 pounds at prejudging, according to his coach Chad Nicholls, and reported by Flex magazine. It was a contest that Coleman dominated. 1 year later, Coleman returned to the Olympia even bigger. When his music started for his posing routine, the voice of Olympia promoter David Pecker can be heard announcing the champion as 5'11" and 295 pounds. Once again, Coleman won with a perfect score. Coleman retired in 2007 with 8 Olympia titles and is still considered by many to be the strongest bodybuilder of all time. On the other hand, 2-time reigning Mr. Olympia Mahmoud Big Ramy Elsbieh made a first big impression in his pro debut at the 2013 New York Pro. Some competitors avoided standing next to him because they didn't want to appear dwarfed by the massive man from Egypt. Elsbieh is reportedly 5'10" and has weighed as much as 341 pounds in the offseason. He has competed on the sport's biggest stage, weighing above 300 pounds. He tipped the scales at 316 pounds at the 2015 Olympia, but the extra size didn't help his cause. Phil Heath won his 5th of 7 Olympia titles that year, while Elsbieh finished in 5th. Elsbieh focused more on conditioning in recent years, but still carries a lot of muscle. The 290-pound ripped version of Big Ramy was impressive enough to win his first Olympia in 2020. He defended his title 1 year later with 5 additional pounds on his frame. Time will tell if he tries to compete at or above 300 pounds again, but he remains one of the most successful big men in the sport's history. Ronnie Coleman remains the heaviest man to ever win the Mr. Olympia at a body weight of 296 in 2004, even after Big Ramy won his Olympia. Comparisons between the two colossal men, Ramy and Ronnie, soon sprung up everywhere online and in social media. Ronnie Coleman's comments on Big Ramy. 8-time Olympia winner Ronnie Coleman addressed the comparisons between him and Big Ramy following the Egyptian's win at the 2020 Mr. Olympia. Immediately after he won the 2020 Mr. Olympia, people began comparing Big Ramy to Ronnie Coleman. The 8-time Olympia champ responded to these comparisons and explained what is different between the two of them. It is not hard to argue that Coleman is one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time. His record wins at the Olympia prove that, but he also looks the part with his massive size still being talked about to this day. The biggest that Ron ever got for a stage presentation was around 330 pounds, which was absolutely insane to see. While that was not his best conditioned physique, he was still one of the biggest freaks in the sport's history. Someone who is gaining ground on Ronnie's legacy as the quintessential mass monster is Big Ramy. The Egyptian is known for pushing the 300-pound range in weight, but slimmed down to 290 pounds to win the 2020 Mr. Olympia. Given the fact that Ramy is the biggest Olympia champ since Ronnie Coleman, fans have naturally made comparisons between the two. Speaking in a recent interview, Ronnie was asked to address these similarities. While Ron was quick to say that he had more mass in his prime than Ramy does, he also made sure to explain that they are different. It is not just about size, but how you carry the muscle. He explained that if he were to give Ramy advice, it would be to lay off on his leg training for a bit. That way his physique will be able to balance out.
I've seen the difference in somebody's body when they train heavy as when they don't train as heavy. T-bar rows and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, they do a lot of different machines and everything. Of course, that's going to make the biggest difference, especially when you train heavy.
Another point that people have brought up is the idea that Ramy's win signals a return to the trend of mass monsters. Ronnie Coleman seems to think that this change is inevitable, but that it is important to be well-rounded. He specifically said, "What it all boils down to is shape and conditioning. Whether you have the mass or not, that's the guy that's going to win. It's like when Dexter beat Jay. It was all about Dexter was more conditioned than Jay. Jay was a lot bigger, but Dexter had the conditioning." It does seem that Ronnie Coleman has a point about the conditioning being the most important thing. Even Big Ramy could not win the Olympia on size alone, only getting the victory when he came in ultra sharp. It will be interesting to see if the sport does start gravitating towards these mass monsters again. Either way, it is going to be hard to stack up against the legend himself, King Ronnie. Ronnie and Ramy on stage together. Featuring some of the biggest names in fitness, the 2021 Dubai Muscle Show was headlined by the reigning Mr. Olympia bodybuilding champion Big Ramy and 8-time former Mr. Olympia Ronnie Coleman. The event brings together weightlifting enthusiasts and gives them the chance to attend speaker sessions as well as meet and greets with the champion bodybuilders. Organized in collaboration with Dubai Sports Council, the event showcases 250 exhibitors from 25 countries, as well as over 600 athletes and health and fitness influencers from around the globe. Is Big Ramy the next Ronnie Coleman? Akeem Williams shares his thoughts on Big Ramy as the new Mr. Olympia champion and what his future holds. Big Ramy finally fulfilled his destiny after years of hype at the Mr. Olympia 2020. He became a champion when many doubters thought he might not ever get his conditioning under control. Now the big question is, what lies ahead for his future? There's no doubt that the physique he presented in 2020 was a game changer. He hit a size and conditioning that will be hard to beat, if he can keep it consistent. Many have made comparisons to him and Ronnie Coleman, but is Big Ramy really able to stand up to that legendary status? That's the exact question interviewers asked Akeem Williams, Big Ramy's competitor. Akeem, of course, has his own plans. He wants to take down Big Ramy and become the next Mr. Olympia champion. Akeem has the promise to achieve this dream, with many gurus and experts seeing him as a threat in the near future. That being said, Akeem Williams also acknowledges just how far Big Ramy improved at the Olympia 2020. Ronnie predicted Big Ramy's Olympia win. Before Big Ramy won the Olympia 2020, Ronnie Coleman predicted that Ramy would be the next reigning champion of an era. In an interview with Generation Iron, interviewers asked Ronnie Coleman if he thought there would ever be another bodybuilding champion like him. He answered, no. Instead, he believed that each era has their own new version of an Olympia champion, each different in their own way but exceptional nonetheless. He explained there are a few exceptions in the form of one-time Olympia champions. The title is often held for multiple years in a row. Both Ronnie Coleman and Lee Haney held it for 8 years. Dorian Yates had it for 6. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Phil Heath held it for 7. Ronnie Coleman points this out as there being different eras of Olympia champions. He points out that Phil Heath, at the time, was the current reigning champion who dominated conversation for 7 years. He also predicts that Big Ramy will be the next big Olympia champion.
I think the next guy coming up, I think it's going to be Ramy. And then I think it's going to be Ramy. And, you know, everybody's going to have their own era for the most part.
Ronnie turned out to be right, as 2020 solidified the years of hype behind Big Ramy. Of course, it remains to be seen if he will continue forward as Olympia champion in future years. Ronnie Coleman believes that Ramy will be the next ongoing Olympia champion. Ronnie Coleman's words and thoughts about the future of bodybuilding have been pretty consistent. He predicted that Phil Heath was in the fading part of his career going into the Olympia 2020. Heath ultimately placed 3rd, so perhaps his predictions about Big Ramy will stick the landing as well. How long Big Ramy's era lasts remains to be seen, but there is no denying that Ramy has always been a powerhouse bodybuilder with loads of potential. If he can remain in top shape for the coming years, he very well may be unbeatable. That's all for this video, folks. See you another time.